This podcast is part of the It Was a Thing on TV podcast network.
An anthology on the bad, the short-lived, and forgotten shows and events in television history. You are listening to It Was a Thing on TV.
Time is up. You ran into trouble.
Episode 605, submission number 035. You're in the Picture. You're in the Picture aired on CBS on Friday, January 20th of 1961 for just one very infamous episode. And a week later, there is an apology. But that's not really an episode of this show, even though there was a credit roll in the beginning for You're in the Picture.
Jackie Gleason. You're in the Picture with Jackie's guests, Jan Sterling, Arthur Treacher, Patricia Carroll, and Pat Harrington Jr. And now, here's the head of our gallery, our catalyst, Jackie Gleason.
You're a good group.
We've been here now going on 6.5 years, and we haven't touched one of the most infamous television shows in history. There's been shows we've talked about in the past, or we've referred to, where there's been one episode, or at least one aired episode, or not even a full episode. We talked about Turn On, at least here in Cleveland. It aired 15 minutes. They got to the first commercial break and they're like, nope, we've had enough complaints. And there's a few other shows that have had one episode, which we may or may not cover. I'm thinking The Rich List. That was one that had one episode almost 20 years ago. Good heavens. But there's more than that. But this is by far the most infamous one episode series ever. Greg, I don't know if you had ever done this, but since you're close to Coney Island, have you ever gone to Coney Island?
Yes.
Okay. Have you ever gone to one of those sort of stand-up things where you can put your head through and get your picture taken as who knows what?
Truth be told, I've never seen that. Every time I've gone to Coney Island, it's either to go on the boardwalk or stop at Nathan's get a hot dog before I have to go to a Cyclones game because the Brooklyn Cyclones Stadium is right next to Coney Island.
Really? Okay. I figured you were going to say no to that. And the reason I thought that is because maybe these types of things are from a previous era. Me, I know there's somewhere, presumably at my dad's house, a photo of me probably about 2 years old when we lived in Florida, where we did just that. I put my head in the picture board or whatnot with the head cut out, and I think it was at one of the Gator parks, because I know my family, mom and dad, had plenty of pictures when I visited the Gator park back in 1977. But I don't remember ever doing that specifically again. Sticking your head through and ha ha ha, he's a bodybuilder on the beach. He's got strong muscles lifting up a weight, and she's got big bazungas. And I don't remember ever doing anything like that. Not that as a 12 or 13-year-old I would have done anything like that, because I don't think my parents would necessarily be that cuckoo, but who knows? We've got some weird parents around here. Believe it or not, that's actually the entire premise of this show. You have Jackie Gleason, the great one, hosting this game where four panelists put their heads through one of these big pictures, kind of like at Coney Island or kind of like at the Gator Park or wherever. And the object was they had to guess where they're at. So it's just a regular panel show. But now instead of guessing what's this person's secret or what's this person's line, you're guessing what event is happening. So you got to discern, is it a real event? Is it from a story? Is the person who's being questioned, are they representing a female character or a male character? And you got to try and whittle it down. Again, not unlike What's My Line, not unlike I've Got a Secret, not unlike Take a Good Look. And Jackie Gleason, on the apology episode, which we'll get to in a little bit, said this went over like with flying colors when they practiced this. Hilarious. Now, maybe it just didn't translate well because it was hilarious to Jackie Gleason and his little cadre of friends and people who would appear on the show. But Jackie thought it had legs, and we'll get a little deeper into what worked or what didn't work and why this only aired one time. There's reasons beyond scheduling, at least in terms of what it went up against. There's a big event that happened on the day of the premiere episode, and I wonder if that might have had some influence as to the ratings for the show, as to whether people actually watched it. But again, we'll get to that later. So as I said, the show was hosted by Jackie Gleason. I don't think I need to say any more, but we could say Ralph Cramden on the Honeymooners. But again, we could talk about so much stuff with him. We could talk about The Hustler, The Color of Money. We could talk about the Jackie Gleason show back in the 60s, that sort of Honeymooners type of show, the hour-long show that was done in Miami. We could also talk about Smokey and the Bandit. Again, just so much stuff we could say about him. His announcer for the show, and I thought this was kind of interesting in two respects. His announcer was Johnny Olson. I was surprised because Johnny Olson was doing stuff like What's My Line, doing other things, and he did this for Jackie Gleason for CBS. Now, admittedly, Johnny Olson, I think, was a CBS voice primarily, even though he did like Match Game for NBC back in the 60s. But I was very surprised to hear Johnny Olson's voice, but also I wasn't, because, again, when Jackie Gleason did his Honeymooners show, the hour-long in the late 60s, who was his announcer that went to Miami every week? It was Johnny Olson.
That's right, Mike. I would like to go to Miami because I want to go see some Miami Dolphins games.
They would have existed in the late 60s, wouldn't they?
Yes, they would have. I was a big fan of Bob Greasy.
Well, that would have been a little later. I don't think he started playing until the early 70s. Obviously, he was on the 72 team, but a fan of Bob Greasy. Okay.
There's a lot of things you don't know about me, Mike.
I'm absolutely sure of that, and I don't know if I necessarily want to know what else I don't know about you. No secrets you want to reveal?
This isn't I've Got a Secret, Mike.
I tried. Always good hearing from you, Johnny. On the show, there are four panelists. They're the ones that I said put their heads through this image, and they had to guess what they're doing, what situation they're in. And they actually got, I'd say, three decent names, and one, maybe she was popular in 1961 type of person. That, maybe she was a little popular in 1961 type of person is Jan Sterling. And I don't know what she would have necessarily been doing in 1961. She was on a number of episodes of a lot of things. She was on an episode of Wagon Train around that time. She was on the Naked City even though that would be a little bit later in 1961. She was on an episode of Alfred Hitchcock Presents in 1961. So she might be better known for just doing a lot of things, but never was like a big star in any one thing. And unfortunately, she passed away about 22 years ago, 2004. The other three panelists on this show, to say the least, they're a little more popular. Maybe not 1961 popular, but give them 10 years, 15 years, they'll find their roles they'll be known for. First, we had Pat Harrington. And Pat Harrington, we would know him as Schneider on One Day at a Time. That's, I think, the big role everybody knows him for. But he did, again, so much stuff leading up to that. He did plenty of TV shows. He did pilots. There was a pilot called Big Spenders back in 1974 that he hosted with one of the absolutely amazing sets. The game wasn't so good, but the set, oh my gosh, that was trippy. A lot of 3D effects and whatnot. But Pat Harrington, again, just did so much stuff over the years. Shows that we're going to talk about, shows that we have talked about. Again, just too many. Buddy Schneider. That's the character that people our ages remember. Schneider from One Day at a Time. The super with that mustache. Oh, the mustache. That's what you remember him for. Or at least that's what I remember him for. The third panelist is Pat Carroll. Again, Pat Carroll has done plenty of things in her life, but I think her most popular role would come almost 30 years later when she voiced Ursula in The Little Mermaid. But again, she had done so many things before 1989. She was on the Danny Thomas Show, 40 episodes. She was on Busting Loose, not the Jimmy Walker show from like 1987. We're talking Busting Loose from 1977 with Paul Sylvan. We've talked about it in the past. But the one place I remember her from growing up, she was in the final season of Too Close for Comfort. She was a newspaper owner who actually brought Henry Rush aboard as a co-owner. That's when the Rushes and Monroe moved to Marin County outside of San Francisco to get away from the rat race in San Francisco. That's where I really remember her from first. Plus, she also did She's the Sheriff, another show that we may or may not cover. That one's like infamously bad, primarily because it was in that primetime starts at 7:30 lineup back in 87. The last panelist is Arthur Treacher.
Oh, I know where I know him best from. The fish and chips restaurant.
A little bit more than that, but you're not exactly wrong. He was sort of a butler type of character in a lot of movies. He was also, I think, like the Merv Griffin show's sidekick back in like the 60s. But the Arthur Treacher's restaurant, yes, he lent his name for that. And that's one place I miss. And not even kidding, there's only like 2 or 3 Arthur Treacher's restaurants left. And one, if not 2 of the 3, or one of the 2, is probably like 15 miles from here. Seriously, I need to go visit that. Because I haven't had Arthur Treacher's in 30 years. It was prevalent around here, but it sort of died off in like the mid-90s. But, oh, Arthur Treacher's, I can taste their chicken just as we're talking about it. Oh, that's some good stuff.
I think they're absorbed into the Nathan's family now.
Well, that'd be nice if they had some Nathan's around here. There's no Nathan's restaurants around here. The hot dogs are sold in supermarkets, but who knows? I thought Arthur Treacher's was locally owned here, at least in the sense of there's a local owner that has those two franchises that are in this area.
I know a couple years ago when I went to the South Shore Mall in Bayshore, they had an Arthur Treacher's fish and chips inside of the Nathan's in the food court of the mall.
Okay. Now I'm taking a look here, and there's actually three Arthur Treacher's restaurants in Northeast Ohio. One is not terribly far away, probably about 10 miles away. The second one, I think, is like 15 miles away, and the third one is down near Akron, so that's like 40 minutes away. Arthur Treacher's, again, sounds really good. And they had like steak fries, but they were not just like flat steak fries, they were like crinkle cut steak fries. Oh, so good. We could be here all day reminiscing about Arthur Treacher's, but we do have a TV show we got to talk about. Oh, that Arthur Treacher's looks good. I'm still looking at it. So, as I said, the four panelists, they stick their head through a caricature of a scene, whether real life, whether fictitious, whether from a story. Like, for example, the first one, and this wouldn't air nowadays because, yeah, you'd get complaints. The first situation was Pocahontas saving John Smith from being beheaded. And they actually had a caricature of Pocahontas with the Native American outfit, and there was a Native American with a hatchet, with an axe, ready to cut John Smith's head off when he had his head on like a tree trunk. You've seen representations of that. That wouldn't necessarily fly nowadays. And then they had stuff like Goldilocks and the Three Bears. They had a Metropolitan Museum of Art situation where one person was not a curator, but let's say a cleaner, had a feather duster and was dusting statues. And the other three people were the statues like Atlas and the Thinker. So you had a nice little variety there. And I thought it was, outside the potential offensiveness of the Pocahontas one, I thought it was decent, but there were some issues. There were 5 pictures played in this one episode, and they didn't offer money per se. What Jackie Gleason said at the start of the show was if the panelists identified what scene was happening, there would be 100 care packages sent in the guessing player's name. And if they missed, 100 care packages would be sent in Jackie Gleason's name. Now, they didn't get into what's a care package. And really at this time, 1961, the United States wasn't in any wars. Yes, there were tensions because you had Cuba and you had Russia. The whole Bay of Pigs thing would happen in 62. But they didn't say specifically, we're going to send care packages in these people's names overseas or what have you. So who knows what exactly a care package entailed. There was no mention of any sort of money swapping hands on the show or passing out something from the sponsor, who for the first episode was Kellogg's. And then for the second episode, the apology episode, was L&M cigarettes, because what would be a game show in 1961 without a cigarette sponsor? They wouldn't know how bad cigarettes are till a couple years later. And actually, in that first episode, and also the second episode, the apology episode, the Kellogg's commercials were done by Dennis James. I thought that was great. Dennis James doesn't get the acclaim that maybe he deserves.
I'd be remiss to mention, Mike, that Kellogg's also sponsored Top Cat.
Yes, they did. And now you're reminding me that I need to possibly pick up the Blu-ray of that, because I've got the DVD set from like 20 years ago, but I know there's cases of DVD rot with that series.
Oh yeah, Warner Brothers was notorious for DVD rot in that era.
Well, also, I paid $3 for it like 17 years ago. I think I can afford a proper upgrade to a more current media.
Hey, I've already got them ripped to my Plex server.
You know, if I had a better computer and if I had the ability or desire to do a Plex server, oh, I'd do that with Top Cat. I'd do that with the Tom and Jerry Blu-ray collection that I just got a couple of days ago from 1940 to 1958 with all the banned episodes. Oh, yeah. I just don't have the time or the desire to do that. I actually have an answer as to what a care package is. It's for the humanitarian organization CARE, the Cooperative for Assistance and Relief Everywhere. And the care package is like the care package that you probably would expect. Taking a look at a picture on Wikipedia of one from 1948, there's canned food, coffee, sugar, rice, raisins. So pretty much food necessary for survival. Just your basics. So I'm guessing these were passed out overseas or, again, possibly to service members who needed them. So that's nice. So they probably gave away, I'm guessing, 500 care packages in this episode, 100 per picture. The music on the episode, and there's some good music. You heard the open when we started the show. That was actually done by Jackie Gleason himself. It was done by a Dixieland band, but the credit for the music was actually given to Jackie Gleason, or he was given like a composer credit of some sort at the end of the episode. So he really had his hand in all this. And the game itself, created by two maybe not necessarily well-known names in the game show business, but each of these two people was important in different respects. We're talking Don Lip and Bob Sines. Don Lip, you would probably best know as the producer on The Money Maze and The Big Showdown. Bob Sines, he did a lot of stuff. He passed, oh my gosh, probably about in the range of about 35 years ago, and actually IMDb confirms that August 5th of 1990 at age 58. But he produced quite a bit of stuff. The $1 Million Chance of a Lifetime. I remember seeing him in the final episode of Dreamhouse when they call out all the crew members and whatnot. The Magnificent Marble Machine, he was a producer on that. The place I remember him as a kid, he was involved in Funhouse / Fox's Funhouse. There's your Fox's Funhouse reference. We know how much I absolutely did not enjoy Fox's Funhouse versus the syndicated Funhouse. Give me the syndicated Funhouse 99 out of 100 times over Fox's Funhouse. That's what I was raised on. I didn't get Nickelodeon until like 1989, 1990, so I had to be a Funhouse family. Well, we did get Double Dare when it was in syndication around Fox. I think it was in syndication. It aired on Fox here with Finders Keepers. So we did get a little bit of Double Dare, but we didn't get like the halcyon days of Double Dare.
Well, Mike, you know who distributed Funhouse, right?
Could it be Lamar Telepictures?
Cool.
Cool. Ding, dang, dong.
Cool.
I think it's the first time we've mentioned Tiny this year. It's the 35th anniversary of the end of Funhouse, Fox's Funhouse, but he wasn't involved in that Fox's Funhouse year because unfortunately Tiny was just too dorky to make the transition. It's Fox's Funhouse. It's got to have attitude. We can't have Tiny. No, he's too dorky. He's too geeky. We got to have somebody who's hip with the kids.
Rupert Murdoch was like, I'm not going to have that tiny shit on my station. Arg!
Is that your Rupert Murdoch impersonation?
That's right.
I'm waiting for Rupert Murdoch to say, "You call that a knife? This is a knife." That was not good.
No.
You tried, but also at the same time, Rupert Murdoch's what, like 95 years old. He's a head on a stick at this point. He may sound like that, just like really bad Australian. But anyhow, getting back to the show, I said that there was something that may have contributed to this show lasting only one episode. The date I mentioned was January 20th of 1961. If you know what happens on January 20th every 4 years, that should give you an idea as to what happened. That was the day John F. Kennedy got inaugurated. Taking a look at the TV listings, it looks like most of the coverage on the big three networks ended between 2:30 and 4 o'clock that day. And I don't see anything necessarily carrying over into the time slot where You're in the Picture was at. It definitely isn't like nowadays 24/7 media cycle where they'll show everything regarding the inauguration, then they'll do the ball afterwards and all the festivities around the inauguration until 12, 1, 2 in the morning. You're in the Picture aired that day, January 20th of 1961, which is a Friday, at 9:30 p.m. It's competition. I don't know what bell hour is on NBC. I'm guessing it's one of those shows from back in the 50s and early 60s, sort of like a Playhouse 90 type of thing, where who knows what they're going to air. On ABC, though, the second half hour of 77 Sunset Strip. I don't have the ratings, but maybe even with Jackie Gleason, you're not necessarily beating Kooky, Lend Me Your Comb. At the end of the episode of You're in the Picture, though, there was a promotion for what's coming up next on CBS, which at that time was The Twilight Zone. So you actually had Rod Serling saying, "Stay tuned, Nix, for The Twilight Zone," which is probably one of the best things about this episode, not even going to lie. And I just want to see what Twilight Zone was on that night. That night on The Twilight Zone, story concerns a used car dealer, played by Jack Carson, whose selling tactics receive a shattering blow. Now you see, whenever they do one of those marathons, and I know they just did it on New Year's Day, New Year's Eve, I think even like Christmas Eve on H&I, and Sci-Fi really does it every year for like 2 full days. I need to find that episode. And actually, it may just like appear on MeTV every now and then. I don't watch MeTV when Twilight Zone airs because that's like 1 in the morning, and I'm asleep at 1 in the morning because I got to be up at 6 in the morning for work. So that was the only proper episode of this show. I thought it was different. I thought it was okay, but I think Jackie Gleason was trying to lead the panelists a little bit too much down the garden path, giving like really specific answers and hints towards the identities. I know it's more or less for fun. The only difference is whose name are these care packages going to be in. It didn't feel as organic as, let's say, the question you'd see on I've Got a Secret, or What's My Line, or To Tell the Truth. The answers, like I said, they weren't just yes or no. They were very specific, and he put in a lot of hints, and I thought maybe he was giving a little bit too much away to the panelists. But you know what? It doesn't matter what I thought, because that next week, we have the open, just like the start of the first show, but even Johnny Olson, when the show starts, says something to the extent of, "You're going to experience something different tonight." I mean, that could be taken a couple of ways. You're going to experience something different in terms of this new panel show that's sweeping the nation or whatnot. But no, you're going to experience something different because you're going to see Jackie Gleason for half an hour give a mea culpa to a nationwide audience, because he said that was the biggest bomb. And as I had said earlier in the episode, he actually said that when they did run-throughs of this, I'm guessing between him and Bob Saenz and Don Lip and maybe other people involved, maybe potential panelists, it was hilarious. But then in the translation to television, something got lost. And again, is it a self-inflicted wound with what I said just a few moments ago about Jackie Gleason giving too much information? It wasn't just yes or no, it was yes, but then he threw in some sort of clue, obscure or otherwise, to sort of get them to the right area. Jackie Gleason just sat in a chair on the set with nothing behind him. It was an empty stage for half an hour, smoking cigarettes, giving an apology, and then also saying a lot of stuff in terms of what's happened in his career, in terms of similar bombs. So it wasn't just about the show. He went kind of off path a number of times. And he even had the picture of Pocahontas and John Smith that he brought out just to show the people who may have missed that first episode what the premise was. And he really sort of lambasted the whole idea. And actually, Jackie Gleason even said that the stagehands that brought out the caricature of Pocahontas and John Smith, they had their backs facing the camera because they didn't want to be identified. Maybe you don't necessarily want to be identified with this big bomb. There's not much more we can really say about this show. Like I said, there's the one episode, and then the apology, which sort of meandered after the first 5 or 10 minutes. You did get your L&M cigarette advertisements with Jackie Gleason smoking away. And you did get a couple of ads in the apology for Kellogg's with Dennis James. Always appreciated. But just kind of weird seeing a half-hour apology where maybe the real apology lasted like 10 minutes, 8 minutes. Then is Jackie Gleason filling time for the next half hour because he's got 30 minutes to fill on presumably live or close to live television. I don't think this is live, but at the same time, you got to figure that the episode, the apology that is, you got to figure that the apology was probably done same day, not necessarily 9:30 at night. Because, again, as I said, the premiere episode, there were mentions of John F. Kennedy's inauguration. So they knew when they were going to air. So I'm going to presume it was recorded sometime that week or maybe even during the inauguration. Gosh knows, television shows had been recorded during the inauguration, and if Chico was here this week, which he's not, he's on a well-deserved vacation for his birthday, Chico would remind us that he went to go see the episode of Maury with the chicken tetrazzini during Obama's first inauguration.
Chicken tetrazzini.
I've seen that episode in the past, and I still don't understand what the heck's going on. But also at the same time, when Chico was on Jeopardy, whenever it was, like 7 or 8 years ago, what was his interview story with Alex Trebek? I was in the audience for the infamous Chicken Tetrazzini episode of Maury, and I bet you 99.9% of viewers who heard that are like, what the heck is the Chicken Tetrazzini episode? But the 0.1% of us who actually watched the soup on a regular basis back in the day are like, yeah, the Chicken Tetrazzini episode. It was one of the most infamous episodes of Maury ever.
Man, could you imagine you having something to top that if you ever got interviewed by Ken?
Well, I've got stuff, and I do have like really interesting stuff that even you don't know about. You're laughing. What do you? Would you want me to like reveal something that you don't know about me, or what?
Well, no. Could you imagine though if you told Ken the story about how you bought the slide of Cesar Romero holding the oranges and saying, "Look, certain somebody is going to out there going to get it. There's only going to be like a bunch of people in the world that are going to get it. And you could just say, hi, Frank.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, I could say hi, Frank, and I could give a shout out to the Fun for All Ages podcast, because anybody in that group absolutely gets the joke and recognizes it. But again, that's such a small subsection of society that 99.9% of people would be like, what the heck is he talking about? He's a crazy man. But no, I do actually have legit stories that could be told. And actually, when you do the interviews for Jeopardy, you actually have to list 5 different anecdotes. Now, if you're on after more than 5 days, they may have to do a little bit of tap dancing or look for a 6th anecdote or a 7th anecdote or an 8th anecdote. But yeah, I've got 5, and really the 5 that I had, I mean, there's a couple of really big winners on there. And I'm surprised that they didn't call me back when I passed the test and when I was in the pool back in 2019. But at the same time, we know what happened a year later. Actually, it was about 6 months later. The world ended, essentially. But that's really just about it with You're in the Picture. It had 1 episode. It had its issues. The next week, Jackie Gleason came to an empty stage, sitting in a chair, smoking, and apologizing to the TV audience for laying one of the biggest eggs in the history of television. And finally, after close to 6.5 years, that bomb of a TV show has formally been recognized as a thing on TV.
Greg here. Before Mike gives the pre-recorded plug, I just wanted to mention that I Mandela affected that Keenan Wynn was in this pilot, or somebody, I guess, told me prior. I remember it was Mike or Chico that Keenan Wynn might have been on this pilot, but he wasn't. And I'm very sad that I didn't get a chance to talk about Alonzo P. Hawk and Herbie the Love Bug and Flubber. But at least I got a chance to mention that in this recorded bit at the end here. All right, let's go to Past Mike with the plugs.
You can find us at our website, itwasathingontv.com, on Facebook at It Was a Thing on TV Podcast, and elsewhere at It Was a Thing on TV. You can find us on any podcast player, and we're also on YouTube, where you can subscribe to our channel to keep up to date with our releases, including what's coming up next time. With Chico back, we're going to revisit yet another show. This one, when we put it on the schedule, we originally had a blank for next week up until maybe about a month and a half ago. And then Shout Factory on its YouTube channel, for a weekend to start, was going to air this show, nonstop, 24/7, no commercials, no ads, with commentary, almost like they ripped it directly from the DVDs. And then a weekend turned into well over a month. And just this week, sadly, I was looking for this because I just like watching it out of the blue. And it was gone. Shout TV, I thought they were going to keep it up forever because it always had people watching. I got to give them credit. For something that they kept online for well over a month, even up until earlier this week as we record, you go in at any time and there's 18, 20 people watching it. Obviously, it had a following. We're going to revisit the show next week because, again, as the podcast has evolved or devolved, depends on your point of view, there's stuff that we may have missed. There's people we may have missed. There's humor we may have missed. And there are just so many classic moments in this TV show. I know Greg, he's going to have stuff to say about at least one episode, and I think we're both going to have stuff to say about that one episode, especially because the first time we covered this show, Greg was unsure about how to pronounce the guy's name. And I just remember when he did it, it was funny, but not a ha-ha, laugh at Greg funny thing. I can see how Greg misinterpreted it. But next week, we're going to have the return of Duke Musekian. Not Duke Muskian, Duke Musekian. Duke Muskian. I remember that. And the thing is, again, with all due respect to you, Greg, yeah, I don't think you necessarily may have known at the time how to pronounce an Armenian last name. That's absolutely 100% Armenian. And I've dealt with enough Armenians in my life to know that's Duke Musekian, not Muskian.
Okay, hold on a second. I pronounce names the way they're spelled. If you give me a name, I'm going to pronounce it as it's spelled, unless I have a pronunciation guy.
Well, like I said, it's an Armenian name, and I've had professors that are Armenian. I dealt with customers that are Armenian. So I understand when I see a name that ends in IAN, it's an Armenian name. So I'm not making fun of you. I just think it's funny in retrospect, Deuce Muskian. But we're going to talk about Deuce Muskian. I'm sorry. Did I say Deuce? I'm sorry, Duke.
Deuce.
Deuce, yeah, Deuce Muskian.
Deuce McAllister.
Well, I was going to say Deuce McBride for the Knicks, but yeah, we're going to drop a deuce next week. Well, I think we may be dropping more than just one deuce, but we're going to talk about how this all relates. We're going to talk about the Handsome Boy Modeling Agency next week. Oh, it's going to be fun. Right here next time on It Was the Thing on TV. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you to Greg as always. Chico, I hope you're enjoying your well-deserved break. We'll see you next week. Right here, It Is the Thing on TV. And please stay safe, stay warm. I know this area is absolutely getting pummeled by cold weather. If we're getting pummeled with cold weather, odds are you're probably getting the same. See you next week.
Wow.
I'm going to make you an offer you can't refuse. We're going to take a little ride.
At Arthur Treacher's, we realize that there are some members of some families who don't come in all that willingly the first time, but then they discover our delicious fish and chips.
Eat.
They see all the other wonderful things we make. And, well, the only thing harder than getting some people to try the food at Arthur Treacher's is getting them to stop. Arthur Treacher's, we are something else.
I love how the two guys with the Godfather are like, what the fuck? Why are we here? They both have this look on their faces like, oh, really? Huh? And then they see he's enjoying the food. It's like, oh, okay. And they're like, oh, yeah, this is good food. Yep.
We talked earlier about the steak fries that were crinkle cut, kind of, sort of. We talked about the chicken, the fish and chips. The one thing we didn't mention that Arthur Treacher's had the absolute best of, Hush Puppies. Oh my gosh, I'm just thinking about them right now. I may have to make the drive sometime this weekend since this is being recorded on Martin Luther King Day weekend. I think I may need to make a drive to the closest Arthur Treacher's just to experience what I haven't had in like 30 or 35 years.
Hold on. I love how News 5 Cleveland in the recommendations after the video has a video that says the last remaining Arthur Treacher's fish and chips bounces back during Lent. I know it was so popular during Lent.
Well, fish. Makes sense if you think about it.
Yeah.
Arthur Treacher. Oh. Come back on Sunday because, yes, I made a trip to Arthur Treacher's. Is it as good as I remember? I guess you're going to have to find out on Sunday. Cal, time to send us home.